Okay, this is lesson 12.1b in intermediate algebra, and we are just getting started with circles today. And the formula for a circle is almost exactly like the distance formula. That's why we did it in the last video. So let's write that down here. Okay, so there's the distance formula. And what happens if we were to square both sides to get rid of that radical sign? We would end up with d squared equals x minus x squared. And that, my friends, is the equation of a circle, except for one thing. Instead of putting a d here, we put an r there for the radius. Okay, because when you've got a circle, in fact, let's bring this coordinate system in here. Let's bring the circle in here, and look what happens here. If we're interested in the distance from there to the center point, look what we've got. We've got a triangle. So we've got the x and the y, which we have here, and we have there. And if you remember Pythagorean, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is the x and this is the y, or vice versa. C squared is the hypotenuse, which is that right there, and that is the radius. So the radius and the hypotenuse are the same thing. So I can use the distance formula that I have right here for my equation for my circle. Alright, so for example, let's say that I have a circle whose center is -3, 2. And I am interested, and let's say that the radius is 5. And I am interested in finding that equation of that circle. Okay, the equation of that circle. Center is at 3, 2. Now remember when I had this over here a few minutes ago, and I had a center point there, and I had this triangle like that. Okay, the center point was one of the corners of the triangle, and on this one 5 is the radius or the hypotenuse. So what I've been given is the center of the circle and the hypotenuse. Now if that center is at -3, 2, it's going to be about right there. That point right there is about over -3 and up 2 to get there. Okay, so that's where that is. So if I were to draw a triangle, I would draw it to the origin, over, and up. And that would be 5, and this point would be -3, 2. And what I'm looking for is the equation of the circle using this formula. So let's go ahead and do that. My radius is 5, so I'll put 5 there and square it. That equals x minus that point there plus that. Alright, so let's go ahead and solve what we've got. Okay, so notice I took the 2 here and the 2 here off because I only have one x. Up here I had two of them, so I had to designate which one was which. There's one here and one here. There's x1 and x2, kind of like cat in the hat, thing 1 and thing 2. Okay, but since I'm down to only having one x because I know the other x and I know the other y, I don't have to write the x subscript 2 and the y subscript 2. I can, but it's not a big deal. So there's the equation of this circle right there. Alright? Alright, let's keep going. Example 4 says, give the equation of a circle where we have a radius of 3 and whose center is at the origin. So the center is at the origin, which is 0, 0, right? Okay, so again, let's write the formula. Okay, so let's plug in the numbers that we have. So we're going to put in a 3 squared equals, again, we know one of the x's is 0, and we know the other y is also 0 from right here. And so we have 9 equals x squared plus y squared. Okay? And that ends up being our formula, which tells us that x squared plus y squared equals r squared is the formula for a circle whose center point is on the origin. So, makes it easy when we have as a center point right there, and then we've got a circle there with, in this case, with this one, our radius was what? Our radius was 3. And that's the confusing part. A lot of people will put the radius as 9, but 9 is the radius squared. See, radius squared. So if they give us a number here, like 9, in order for us to find the radius of this circle with this equation, we have to take the square root of 9 to get it down to our 3. Okay, so the radius is always the square root of this number all by itself on this side of the equal sign. If there's not a square on it, then you have to take the square root of that, and then that will give you your radius. Alright, so let's continue with example 5. Okay, so there's example 5. They give us that equation, and they're asking us to find the center and the radius. Okay, to find the center is very, very easy, because the center of this circle will always be what makes this 0 and what makes this 0. So if x is 1, that'll make that 0. If y is negative 3, that will make that 0. So that's the center of the circle. Okay, because actually what we're doing, and I probably should show you this because it's going to be important, or it's going to make a mess out of things most likely. We showed that the equation of a circle is x minus a quantity squared plus okay, so this is going to be x minus 1 quantity squared plus y minus negative 3 quantity squared equals 4. Alright, see what happened here? Okay, here is the formula. Both of these have negatives in it. This one has a plus. So in order for that to be a plus, it's got to be written as a negative, but it's a plus. So the only way I can do it is y minus a negative 3, because then it becomes y plus 3. But it has to be written in the formula where the sign after the x is negative, the sign after the y is negative, because that's the formula. So if this has got to be written as a negative, in order to get it to be a plus, this has to be a negative so that they both are positives. Okay, so that's very important to remember. Which then gives us 1 and then negative 3. So, again, 1, the number that makes this 0, and negative 3, which makes this 0, because negative 3 minus negative 3 is negative 3 plus 3, which is 0. So this is going to be 1, and this is going to be negative 3. Okay, so, and this is r squared. This is not the radius. This is the radius squared. So remember what I said earlier. If there's not a 2 up here, that means you take the square root of that, and that will be the radius. So what does that look like then? We're supposed to graph this guy. So we're going to take that, and we have a radius of 2. So we're going to make that a little bit bigger so that we get a radius of 2. And where does it go? Well, we just said that the center of this is 1, negative 3. So this is, whoops, this is going to move the center. Let's go ahead and, I mean, if that had a center in it like that, I don't think, yeah, it does move. It's going to go over 1 and down 3. It's going to be right there. Okay? So what we have is we have a radius of 2, and our center is over 1, down 3. Alright, so that's how you would graph that.